The world will rejoice at the destruction of Israel.
You're looking at the beginning of the end.
The world will not pity Israel. The American people will say, Israel, what? Oh, to hell with those people. The people who did atrocities on Gaza, the people who laughed at the suffering of the Gazans, the people who were pushing us to war for decades, the people who pushed us to war in Iraq, forget those people.
And basically, in the last 5 years, intense, elevated anti-Semitic attitudes have more than doubled their share of the population.
We are witnessing the beginning of the end of Israel. All right, everyone. So let's talk about Israel. We are witnessing the beginning of the end of Israel. Now, why do I say this? Well, because Americans are becoming more and more anti-Israel. In fact, the majority of Americans now hold an unfavorable opinion on Israel. How do I know this? Well, let's look at what Pew Research said this year. It says the public's view of Israel have turned more negative over the past 3 years. More than half of U.S. adults, 53% of American adults now express an unfavorable opinion of Israel, up from 42% in March of 2022. So now 53% of Americans hold an unfavorable opinion of Israel. It is over. That is it. Why do I say this? Because the opinion of the populace is reflected in the political landscape. And so if the opinion of the American people changes on something, then we will see a shift in regards to this something in the American political climate, in the American political landscape. We are going to see a change in American politics in regards to Israel. In fact, we've already been seeing this. Zohran Mamdani, who is openly critical of Israel, won the Democratic primary for mayor of New York City. If you look at the debate, and this is something to behold, if you look at the mayoral debate for New York City, you have all these politicians there, and they're all asked the same question. If you become mayor of New York City, which country would you visit first? And all these mayoral candidates said the same thing. Well, I would visit Israel. I would visit the Holy Land. As if all these politicians just organically came to the decision that they would just visit Israel because they love Israel so much. And it's so obvious that the reason why these candidates gave the same answer is because they're all being paid by the pro-Israel lobby. But there's Zohran Mamdani saying, actually, no, I wouldn't visit Israel. I would actually just stay in New York City because as mayor of New York City, that would be my job.
The first foreign visit by a mayor of New York is always considered significant. Where would you go first? Left to right, Ms. Adams.
First visit, I would visit the Holy Land.
Mr. Cuomo?
Given the hostility and the anti-Semitism that has been shown in New York, I would go to Israel.
Mr. Tilson, where would you go?
Yeah, I'd make my 4th trip to Israel, followed by my 5th trip to Ukraine, two of our greatest allies fighting on the front lines of the global war on terror.
Mr. Mamdani.
I would stay in New York City. My plans are to address New Yorkers across the 5 boroughs and focus on that.
Mr. Mamdani, can I just jump in? Would you visit Israel as mayor?
I will be doing, as the mayor, I'll be standing up for Jewish New Yorkers, and I'll be meeting them wherever they are across the 5 boroughs, whether that's in their synagogues and temples or at their homes or at the subway platform, because ultimately we need to focus on delivering on their concerns.
And just yes or no, do you believe in a Jewish state of Israel?
I believe Israel has the right to exist.
Not
as a Jewish state?
As a state with equal rights.
He won't say it has a right to exist as a Jewish state. Be very clear.
And his answer was no, he won't visit Israel.
I said that.
That's what he was trying to say.
No. Unlike you, I answer questions very directly.
My goal would be to take my first trip to Israel. My wife's life work in this area means a lot to our family.
And people saw that and they said, wow, look, a mayor who is actually authentic. He's not a sycophant towards the pro-Israel lobby. He's not a sycophant towards Israel. And that was actually a selling point for Zohran Mamdani. So the political success of Mr. Mamdani really shows you don't have to be pro-Israel to win a major election in the United States. And the pro-Israel people don't really matter as much as they used to. This is what the victory of Zohran Mamdani proves. So we are seeing the change. And as more and more Americans become negative towards Israel, you will see a change in American foreign policy in regards to Israel, because the majority of Americans now hold an unfavorable opinion of Israel. And there is a reason as to why Tucker Carlson is now more famous than he ever has been in his entire career, because Tucker Carlson's criticism of Israel, Tucker Carlson's criticism of American foreign policy in regards to Israel is really resonating with a lot of people. A lot of people agree with Tucker Carlson. And so Tucker Carlson isn't super famous for no reason. He's very famous because the majority of Americans now actually agree with Tucker Carlson in regards to Israel. And so that's it. And so the American position towards Israel is going to change, and it's not going to be for the better for Israel. It's going to be for the worst, because America is Israel's biggest protector. And what happens when America throws Israel under the bus? What's going to happen what's going to happen when America turns its back on Israel? Israel's done. Israel is done, because we saw the destruction that Iran was able to inflict upon Israel. We saw the destruction. And so America actually helped to protect Israel from Iranian ballistic missiles. Now, what's going to happen when America turns its back on Israel? That's it. It's over. It's done. Israel will be finished. And what's going to happen when Iran arms its ballistic missiles with nuclear weapons and then hits Israel? It's over for Israel. We are witnessing the beginning of the end of Israel. This is the bottom line. And this was concluded by Eric Weinstein recently. There are other people out there who see the writing on the wall. There are people who think about these things, and they are observing these things, and they see the writing on the wall. Eric Weinstein was on the Piers Morgan show recently, and he said, Piers, we are witnessing the beginning of the end of Israel, because he said, we saw the destruction that Iran was able to inflict upon Israel. And he says, all of these Israelis are filled with hubris. They think, look, Iran couldn't even kill a lot of us. We will prevail over Iran. And Weinstein says these people just really can't see it. They can't see what's coming, because what's going to happen when Iran arms its ballistic missiles with nuclear weapons? It's over for Israel. And Eric Weinstein makes a really good point. He says, we saw the ineffectiveness of Israel's Iron Dome. The Iron Dome could not protect Israel efficiently. Israel needed America to help it. Israel needed other countries to help it. And so what's going to happen when Iran decides to arm its ballistic missiles with nuclear weapons and then hit Israel with them? It's over.
What is going on in the Middle East is the beginning of World War III, with Iran, I think, very carefully calibrating a message of violence where the threat to Tel Aviv was calibrated. And my belief is that the amount of damage that could have been inflicted on Tel Aviv far exceeds what was. And that Iran is trying to speak violence as the most skilled speaker of that language, with the possible exception of Vladimir Putin. And that, unfortunately, people, as a result of being relatively long at peace, people have forgotten what violence means as a language. And so when Iran originally set hypersonic missiles into the ground of Israel, killing almost no one, many Israelis responded by saying, you see how incompetent they are? They couldn't kill any of us. And the Iranians must have just been shaking their heads and saying, my gosh, you guys have no idea. We're sending you a message that Iron Dome doesn't work fully for hypersonics. I think what's going on is that you're looking at the beginning of the end. This, once those things are loaded with nuclear weapons, you are talking about a completely different world, and you just saw the beginnings of it. This is the slow roll into a new world where we watch hypersonic missiles slam into a populated metropolis. I lived in Israel for 2 years. And Har means mountain. And there's a place called Megiddo where there's a mountain. And Har Megiddo is where we get the word Armageddon. So Armageddon is just a turnoff in Israel. And, the world has never, civilization has never ended due to thermonuclear warfare. So it's in no one's data set. So everyone who's data driven says, I wouldn't worry so much about it, because they're just not getting it.
It's over. And then what's going to happen when Israel seriously gets hit with an extremely destructive and cataclysmic strike, the world will not pity Israel. The American people will say, Israel, what? Oh, to hell with those people. The people who did atrocities on Gaza, the people who laughed at the suffering of the Gazans, the people who were pushing us to war for decades, the people who pushed us to war in Iraq, forget those people. The American people will not have pity for Israel. The world will actually, and I don't say this because I agree with it. I'm just making an observation. This is my prognostication. I'm not saying I agree with this, but this is my prognostication. This is my observation for the future. The world will rejoice at the destruction of Israel. The world will rejoice. And there are people out there who see the writing on the wall. And I was actually looking at an interview with the CEO of the ADL, Jonathan Greenblatt. And this is what he said about the precipitous rise in anti-Semitism in the United States. He said that in 2019, the ADL did a survey to see how big anti-Semitism is in American society. And so they interviewed a whole bunch of Americans, and they found out that 11% of the US population held intense anti-Semitic views. So then the ADL did a poll in 2024. And they said in 2024, the number rose from 11% to 24%. So they concluded in 2024 that 24% of American adults hold intense anti-Semitic views. Intense, not just, we're not talking about just criticism of Israel. We're talking about intense anti-Semitic views. 24%, according to the ADL in 2024, 24% of Americans hold intense anti-Semitic views.
So we run surveys every 2 to 3 years, like a sentiment analysis, to try to gauge how the majority population feels about Jewish people. So in this case, we do a domestic survey in the United States. And what I can tell you briefly is that we've been doing these surveys, I should say, since the 1960s. So we have a lot of information, a lot of longitudinal data. We're a very data-driven, evidence-based organization. And basically, in the last 5 years, intense, elevated anti-Semitic attitudes have more than doubled their share of the population. In 2019, it was 11% of the US population had intense anti-Semitic attitudes. Today, in the last 5 years, it's gone from 11 to 24%.
And so the CEO of the ADL then talks about anti-Semitism at a global level, And so he said that in 2014, the ADL conducted its first poll to see how big anti-Semitism is in the world. And they found out in 2014 that 26% of adults worldwide held intense anti-Semitic views. So then 10 years later, in 2024, they found out that 46% of adults worldwide hold intense anti-Semitic views.
Now, globally, the numbers are even more stark. So when we did our first global survey of 100 plus countries in 2014, and we work with the market research firm Ipsos, based here in Paris, to do these surveys. In 2014, we found that 26% of adults worldwide had entrenched or extreme anti-Semitic attitudes. 26%. That's more than 1 billion people. We thought that was a lot. When we ran the survey last year, in 2024, that percentage went from 26% to 46%. 2.2 billion adults and change. And that's based on almost 60,000 interviews in many different languages all over the planet. So to see that the percentage of adults worldwide who with intense anti-Semitism has more than or nearly doubled in the last decade is shocking.
So upon Israel's destruction, the world will rejoice. Bottom line, the world will rejoice. And as more and more Americans become critical of Israel, the negative view towards Israel in the American population will be reflected in the American political landscape. And America's foreign policy in regards to Israel is going to change. And eventually, America is going to throw Israel under the bus. All this pro-Israel stuff, all this John Hagee, Ted Cruz Christianity, it's all dying out. Why do you think the vast majority of Americans agree with Tucker Carlson and not Ted Cruz? Look at the debate between Tucker Carlson and Ted Cruz. There's Ted Cruz just echoing the same pro-Israel Christian Zionist opinions we've been hearing for decades. Oh, well, I support Israel because the Bible tells me so and blah, blah, blah. And he's sitting there just regurgitating these heretical views, these Judaizing views, and just saying, oh, well, I have to be pro-Israel because that's what God demands. And there's Tucker Carlson just challenging Ted Cruz on his beliefs. And which person does the vast majority of Americans agree with? Which person do the vast majority of Americans agree with? They agree with Tucker Carlson. Why? Because the opinions, the collective opinion in the United States towards Israel is shifting against Israel. That is the bottom line. That's the bottom line. It's over. It is over for Israel. That's it. Anyway, you guys just heard some theology. God bless.